Okay. Perfect. So today with us, we have Edward Ajab, who is an experienced professional investigator, researcher, business owner, author, and national speaker, specializing in legal investigations, due diligence, background checks, social media, and online investigations and open source intelligence. As founder and president of Nighthawk Strategies based in Washington, D.C., Mr. Ajab has built on many years of experience successfully navigating complex investigative, intelligence, and research challenges. He's conducted thousands of investigations, both nationally and globally, for clients who rank among the largest law firms, companies, and nonprofit organizations in the world. And if that is not fancy enough, he's been featured in Forbes, NBC, CBS, U.S. News and World Report, PI Magazine, Security Today, and many other acclaimed outlets and news sources and podcasts. And he's presented at numerous international conferences, specifically on the topics of social media investigations, online intelligence, and advanced investigative techniques. And then finally, he's been a contributor to 2 books, Art of Investigation 2 and Protection of Assets. So we have someone with a lot of knowledge here, and we are very appreciative that he was able to join us. So I'm going to turn it over to him.
Thank you, Marissa. Thanks to everyone for attending. I'm really looking forward to this presentation because it's something that I give quite a bit at PI conferences, everything from PI conferences to security conferences, bar associations like this one. And it's something that is always evolving, even 5 minutes before I have to present. Usually there's some new breaking news happening in the social media world that keeps this very relevant. So some of you may have heard in the news that Twitter is announcing some changes with its infrastructure. Facebook is always different. So this is a really hot topic for legal professionals because social media and online information are certainly a way for us to get a glimpse into people's lives that we wouldn't otherwise ordinarily or traditionally have. So I think it's a great topic, and I appreciate you inviting me to speak, and I appreciate everyone coming to attend today. So I'm going to hop right into my presentation, and as Marissa said, if anyone does have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I may not see them instantly, but we can we're definitely leaving enough time at the end for some Q&A because there are always a lot of questions on this topic, and I actually like questions the most because it lets me know what's important to you and how you're using this sort of skill set and what sort of value this has to you. So I look forward to lots of great questions at the end. So once again, my name is Ed Ajab. I'm the president of Nighthawk Strategies. We're a private investigation firm based in DC, but we conduct investigations both both nationally and globally. We do everything from your standard background and due diligence investigations on people, all the way up to high-tech open source intelligence, which I'll define in a moment, and social media intelligence, and sort of the more complex digital investigations. I'm on the board of directors for the National Council of Investigation and Security Services. I'm a member of too many PI associations to count, but one of NCISS and Society of Professional Investigators are 2 of the largest, more well-known ones. Also during the last couple years, I've contributed to Forbes, NBC, CBS, just on the topic of how social media investigations are evolving, how background checks are done on Supreme Court justice nominees. That was the Forbes article, and also there's a book coming out later this year called Art of Investigation, the 2nd volume of that, which is stories from private investigators and police investigators from around the country all talking about all of the essential skills that make a great investigator. So I was honored to be invited to speak or to write for that one. So today I'm going to go over a few key points about online and social media investigations. First, talk about what are they? What constitutes an online or social media investigation? What legal practice areas can benefit from incorporating online investigations into your toolkit? Some do's and don'ts and is's and isn't. I wasn't going to try to figure out how to punctuate that, but just some do's and don'ts and what it is and what it isn't and how to do it and what not to do. Some pitfalls to avoid when you're doing investigations online. Then I'll show some popular tools and tricks for conducting investigations using some cool online resources. Of course, I could keep you for 12 hours to go through all the tools and tricks that there are out there, but I'll just demonstrate a few of them. And feel free to either take notes or I'll have some, I can always email some handout materials if you miss some of them, because there are quite a few lists of valuable tools that will be shown. And then finally, some questions and answers. So jumping right into what are online investigations. So kind of putting it in the framework of how a traditional investigation looks. When we do a traditional investigation, think of Sherlock Holmes. We want to know that those real life identifiers, that traditional information that always existed before social media ever came on the scene. So things like your name, your date of birth, your social security number, your address, your occupation. Those are the key identifiers and key pieces of information that we need to lock down when you're doing a traditional old school investigation. But when we introduce online, the world of online sources and social media information, it gets much more complex because people can create an unlimited number of usernames and email addresses and phone numbers. And sometimes, and more often than not, actually, that information is obfuscated in a way that it doesn't immediately identify who that person is. So a name like John Smith will tell you that that's John Smith, but a username baseball fan 123 doesn't identify who that person is. So it requires us as investigators to do a lot of digging, a lot of puzzle piecing together to find out, to take all of this online stuff and find out who the real person and the real identity is behind all of those crazy usernames and email addresses and phone numbers and burner phones there are out there. So a couple of terms that you might have seen before in the ecosystem of online and social media investigations are OSINT and SOCMINT, or social media intelligence. First, OSINT is short for, is an acronym for open source intelligence. Open source intelligence has been around before the internet. It's basically just a way to gather information from open or publicly available sources. So that could be newspapers, government records, directories. Opening up an old phone book or the white pages was a form of doing OSINT, because you're looking for information that's publicly available, that's printed, or that's simply an open source, open to the public. Social media intelligence is a branch of OSINT that specifically refers to collecting information from social media sources. So that would be your Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, so on and so forth. And since social media can make things a little complicated, that's why it's sort of its own separate branch of OSINT. You have to deal with things like different platforms and privacy settings and accounts and what's public and what's not. So those two, the social media aspect of OSINT is very interesting and also changing quite a lot. So why is social media important? Oh my gosh, there's so much information. How can anyone possibly have time to really sit down and go through all of it, or even know where to begin? Well, that's because Over 4.5 billion people globally are on social media, creating content every day, every minute. Over 70% of US adults have at least one social media account, and the average American has approximately 8 social media accounts on average. The average American spends about 2 hours a day on social media and has over 80 apps installed on their smartphone. And communications apps account for about half the time we spend on our phones. So we're generating a lot of data, and some of the data is public and some of it's not. What the data that's public is the data that we typically know we're publishing out there, like when we're taking a picture of our lunch and posting it on Instagram or Facebook, or when people are posting on our social media accounts saying happy birthday. So that back and forth communication can be valuable for investigators. Now, this is something that's new since I started presenting on online investigations. I never thought that there would be a day or a time period where people that I was investigating would make it so easy for me to confirm who they were. But needless to say, this is a big trend that definitely happened a lot in late 2020 and the mid 2021. That people were posting pictures of their vaccination cards that had their full name, their date of birth on it. So that made it very easy to confirm. When we came across an account that was simply baseball fan 123, we would scroll to this time and time period to see if they posted something like this that actually confirmed their real identity. So this is just an example really of how things have changed a lot on social media, and how sometimes things can be quite surprising in what you'd be able to find. So there are a lot of legal practice areas that could benefit from social media investigations and incorporating some sort of online intelligence program into your legal research process. These are, of course, just a few of the practice areas that we have worked in, cases that we've worked on, everything from bankruptcy to divorce cases to landlord-tenant disputes. Personal injury is definitely a big one. No matter what side you're on, actually, looking for information to corroborate if and how and when that injury happened. Criminal defense, employment and labor issues, trust estates, probates. We've actually located quite a few people for inheritances, missing heirs, things like that. All of these we've used social media, and we've used online resources for all of these sorts of legal practice areas and more. So it's definitely can be applied to pretty much any area. So some is and isn'ts for what is social media and online investigations, and what is it not. So it is the collection of open source information publicly available on the internet. It is building a character or a persona, building a background or on a person that you wouldn't otherwise have access to. So when going back to a traditional investigation before the internet existed, we would have a limited means and limited methods to be able to watch what a person is doing. It would really just come down to physical in-person surveillance or looking through public records. Now, social media and online resources give us a glimpse into a person that we wouldn't otherwise see. It is dynamic and it's constantly changing. So not only do the platforms themselves change the rules, but people will delete content that was there. They will, maybe just be in a different mood and decide to post something or say something they wouldn't otherwise say. And it's something that is just like a constant feed. It goes back to the day they created an account, and it just keeps growing and growing from there. So it's something that's definitely changing quite a bit from multiple different perspectives. And finally, it is so much more than just Facebook or scrolling through profiles. I would say back in the early-ish days of social media investigations, I would say maybe 2012, 2013, Facebook was the just dominant social media platform out there. You probably could stop at Facebook at that point and get a decent idea of a person's digital footprint. But now in 2023, there is just so much out there, and the previous statistics I showed showed that the average American has 8 social media accounts. So there's more than just Facebook, and it's more than just sort of reading through someone's timeline. There are other tricks and techniques to squeeze out more valuable data. So what isn't an online investigation? Well, it isn't hacking. This is often a misconception about how private investigators or how information can be obtained. Sometimes it's just an innocent misunderstanding. A lot of it comes from TVs and movies, of course, that we just hop on our computers in our dimly lit room and just with our backlit keyboard and just start hacking away. And I got into someone's Facebook. Here's all their mess. It certainly is not hacking. There are laws against hacking. There are policies against hacking, and then it wouldn't be open source then, because the essence of social media, the essence of doing an open source investigation is it has to be open source. Having a key to the lock or having a access to a back channel certainly disqualifies it from being open source. So there's nothing illegal or hacking or breaching about open source and online investigations. It also isn't breaching private communications, so it's not like we can intercept text messages and phone calls. It's not bypassing privacy settings. This is also a big one that we get asked quite a bit is, if someone has their Instagram locked down or they have their Facebook set to friends only, can private investigators, because we have a license, see behind the curtain? No, unfortunately, we're collecting the same information that the public is collecting, but we have the tradecraft to know of different places to look that information might be hiding, but it's not going beyond or bypassing privacy settings of someone's account. And lastly, it's different from digital forensics. So when someone says, digital forensics or a digital investigation, that's usually referring to physical devices. Like I have a phone or an iPad or a computer, and I want someone to look at the content on that physical device. So that's more in the realm of digital forensics, when you have a physical device in your hand and you're looking to do a forensic analysis of that physical device. So some do's and don'ts when it comes to online investigations. These are helpful for both the investigator and for the attorney or paralegal or legal professional on the other side, is to make sure you're communicating and being clear about your objective. A good example of this is, I guess, let's say you're doing an investigation on John Doe, and you find his social media accounts, and John Doe is posting pictures of him hanging with friends and maybe going to a water park or to a concert, just normal everyday stuff. Well, if the objective is that John Doe claims that he's severely injured and can't work, and his life has been traumatically altered because of his injury, then those concert photos and water park photos and hanging with friends and stuff, then that goes into a much different focus, and that becomes not just everyday information, but information that could really crack your case wide open. So definitely be specific about when you're going to dive into a social media investigation. What is it that matters, and what is it that's just, that doesn't matter? What specifically are you looking for, and what would sort of be the smoking gun for your case, or at least stuff that would be relevant for your case? Do make sure that you do use tools and automation to your advantage, but also use manual analysis. There's a lot of tools out there that are great at scanning for social media profiles. You might see some free websites out there that will, you can type in baseball fan 123 and it will search other sites for you. It will just scan Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram to see if that username exists. Those tools and automations are great for getting a lot done in a little amount of time, but you also need to go through and check to make sure that it didn't pick up any false positives. Sometimes it may even miss things. So the actual manual analysis is where the value comes in for social media and online investigations. Do make sure that if you want to make sure that you keep what you find, that you use preservation software. So Hunchly, Hunchly, Hunchly is one software tool that many investigators use as a digital preservation software. Think of it as something that's taking screenshots of your browser as you're going through someone's social media account. And not only is it taking screenshots, it's actually saving a lot of the metadata in the background and authenticating it so that someone could inspect it later on and say, yes, this was the page that was captured at this time, at this place, and it's authentic and it hasn't been altered, and so on and so forth. So the courts are, and definitely opposing counsel are going to scrutinize things like screenshots or printouts and things like that. But the better package you have when it comes to packaging everything together in a preservation software or into a zip file with all kinds of metadata saved, it's going to be better for your case. So unless you're just going through, of course, and just checking around, but if you want to make sure that you save it in case it's ever called into question later, or it's deleted by the author, I definitely highly recommend using some sort of archival software. And of course, always, always, always be ethical. So there are a lot of ethical standards that apply to traditional investigations. Same thing goes for digital investigations. You want to make sure that you're handling and approaching the investigation ethically, so that it doesn't taint the evidence that you collect, and it doesn't call into question your methods as being unethical. So some don'ts when doing online investigations: avoid using your personal account. There are some social media platforms that will tattle on you if you can see who viewed your profile. So many of you may be familiar with this with LinkedIn. If your privacy settings are not configured as such that when you visit someone's profile, they can see you visited their profile. If you view someone's Instagram story, that will reveal to the author that who viewed their Instagram story. But it's a best practice just to use a blank a blank investigative account. So it doesn't have to be, it can be just a completely sanitized Twitter account that you created just for going and viewing Twitter accounts. So it's also important just for separating evidence that you collect from your own personal account. Of course, if something is connected to your personal account, that could subject your personal account to subpoena if it was used as a springboard for looking into other people's social media. So it's best just to create a separate account when doing these. Also avoid friend requesting or adding the subject. This one also kind of depends on the objective of the investigation. If you are adding the person to be able to see posts that are otherwise restricted, or you friend request the subject to see who their friends list is or what they're posting, or see more of their photos, it does two things. It's first, again, sort of crossing the line of what's considered open source and what's considered publicly available. But it's also a little bit risky because if you're friend requesting somebody to pretend, and you're pretending to be somebody else, and you're able to get information, it could call into question the integrity of what you find, particularly if that person that you're adding or reaching out to is represented by counsel. And you all probably know that the ABA rules about, if someone is represented by counsel, there are certain things you can't do, certain communications you can't have with them. So this is just one to avoid to make sure that it doesn't make the investigation too sticky when it comes to presenting the evidence that you've collected. Also, don't rely solely on databases and third-party tools. As I mentioned in the other slide, there are some great tools out there, but they don't do the job of the investigator. There isn't yet a great AI tool that's going to replace all of this. So it still takes a lot of manual work and a lot of manual research and analysis. And finally, don't stop at just the big sites. If you check Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and stop there, you may be missing out on some non-traditional sites and apps. Maybe there's a dating app that they're on. Maybe they use Cash App or Venmo to pay someone. Maybe they are on a hobby website for hunting, fishing, any number of things that that people tend to be a little less guarded on those non-traditional sites than they are on Facebook, because they're friends with everybody on Facebook, but they're only friends with a certain few people on other accounts. So maybe they're a little less guarded about what they post there. So definitely be sure to check those out.
I'm just going to interrupt you real quick because I got a question. You touched on it a little bit, and you may not be able to answer fully because you're not an attorney, but what are your thoughts specifically on ethical considerations when an attorney or someone represented by an attorney, like a paralegal, uses a fake social media account to gather information?
Yeah, so I mean, it's definitely good to set up a separate account for the collection, because let's say Facebook, for example, Facebook won't let you even use the site in most cases unless you're signed in. So what I do, what many investigators do, is to create just a blank account so that they can log in and see. Sort of where it gets into a gray area, and beyond a gray area is adding someone or talking with someone claiming to be, hey, I went to school with you. Or there are investigators who do a lot of pretexting work and things like that. It does make things complicated, especially when you're doing it on the internet to collect information. So great question. To be safe, it's okay to use a blank account to do your investigating, but avoid the adding or chatting with the person to make them believe that you're something else. And certainly, I know that this has happened before. This falls into the area of hacking, is to say that you're helping the person set up their account and something like that. So that's way beyond, of course. But to answer the question, is to avoid that contact, just to be safe. Began with a disclosure that I defer to the licensed attorneys. All right, so actually that was a good transition, because next I'm going to be talking about some specific tools and tricks for various popular social media sites. The first is Twitter. These are a couple of tools that you can use. These are non-Twitter tools. So these are third parties that have developed a search engine or some kind of tool that will allow you to see pretty cool things about a certain Twitter account. So Follower Wonk is one, for example, that will let you see if two accounts follow one account in common, or what accounts are being followed by two accounts. So you can do a lot of like cross-sectioning and slicing and dicing of data. Tweet Topic Explorer is one where you can, let's say you have an account that just has 30,000 tweets, and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know where do I begin? What I want to know what the popular topics are that they talk about. You plug in that Twitter user's username into Tweet Topic Explorer, and it comes up with a nice word cloud. So if the person is using the I don't know, a political word or something like that, it will show up bigger in the word cloud. So you can kind of get an idea of what they like to post about. And TweetBeaver and Twiangulate are two other tools that just have a whole slew of their Swiss Army knife of Twitter analysis tools. So you can see if person A follows person B, does person B follow person A back? Does person A and person B follow person C? So all kinds of nice ways to slice and dice Twitter data. So I keep these in my toolkit when looking at Twitter accounts. The other one is Instagram. These tools will allow you to pretty much the same thing with Twitter. They'll allow you to see additional information about an account, who follows who. It will let you download high resolution images. So as you know, when you're looking at someone's Instagram account, you're looking at a compressed image. So the quality of that image was reduced so that it loads faster on your phone. So if you're ever looking at it and squinting to try to make out a license plate number or something, I'd recommend using something like Insta Offline, which will pull the original high resolution image from Instagram. We've cracked a couple of cases like that where there was some piece of paper in the background or some certificate on someone's wall or a license plate. He couldn't read it. So we used Insta Offline to extract that high resolution image to then be able to read it. And I won't be able to really dive into too much detail about all of these, but these are just some of the top tools to play around with when you come across an Instagram account and see what these different tools can do for your investigation. The next is email research. So you got an email, now what? So here are the tools that will help you learn more about what could be behind that email address. So these tools will tell you possibly approximately how long the email address has been active or out there on the internet. It will tell you if the email is just a bogus email, and it will, any message sent to it will bounce back. It will provide you with some verification information. The last one, Epios, is good for checking Gmail accounts. So if you have a Gmail account, it will actually tell you the full first and last name that was used to register that Gmail account. So if you have something like, again, baseballfan123@gmail.com, and you plug it into Epios, Epios is able to retrieve the person's name, at least what they registered with, because they might have registered with John Doe, but that will allow you to extract some additional potentially useful information from email addresses. The next is sort of similar to that, data breaches. Now this is referring to information that has been made, information that's now publicly available because of a data breach. Now you're probably thinking, well, I just told you to stay away from hacking. So, but this is, many of you have probably heard of the website Have I Been Pwned? It's a website where you can type in your email address and find out if that email address has ever been part of a data breach. And I can almost guarantee that everyone has been part of a data breach. It could be something as simple as LinkedIn was hacked in 2014, I believe, and Adobe was hacked, and Target was hacked. All this. So what happens in these data breaches is lists are obtained of, thousands or even millions of customers, and it usually contains your first name, your last name, the email address you signed up with, your phone number, maybe sometimes the password sometimes. So the way we use data breach data in investigations is simply to check if someone had an account somewhere. So if I use Have I Been Pwned, and I type in my target, John Doe 123 or Baseball Fan 123, it will tell me if that email address was ever part of any huge data dump or data breach. And if let's say I find among the list Ashley Madison or some dating website or some, whatever, those are just simply clues into the accounts and the websites that email address had signed up for. We don't go any further than that. We don't try to break into the account and then look at the messages they sent and blah, blah, blah. We just leave it there because what we're searching for is simply clues and leads in our investigation that will point us in a direction to learn more about the subject. Again, keeping it legal, keeping it ethical, simply using the public data as part of the data breach to see what else our subject was associated with. All these sites pretty much do the same thing. The second from the last one, Avast Hack Check, is actually provided by an antivirus company. So these are publicly available databases provided by legitimate companies that will allow you to see if a certain email address and sometimes phone number was associated with a data breach. Next, if you're doing business research, of course, the internet is a great tool for that. You can look and see if a particular business received a PPP loan. So it's not only the loan that's important, it's how many employees did they claim on that loan? What bank did they get the loan from? Maybe different statistical information about the business. Was the loan forgiven? What did they use the loan for? So if you're doing any kind of asset investigation, a judgment recovery, a pre-litigation investigation, you can look into that sort of information on private companies that wouldn't otherwise be available. So publicly traded companies, all this stuff is there's so much more available on a publicly traded company, but for private companies, it can be extremely difficult to find out simple things like how many employees do they have and what's their monthly payroll budget and how much do they spend on utilities and overhead. The PPP data that's out there will tell you all of that on these dashboards. ProPublica, Federal Pay, and PPP Detective are three great ones for that. You can also look at business background information from Dun & Bradstreet, Hoover's, PitchBook, Zoom Info, Crunchbase, Indeed, and Glassdoor. Glassdoor is particularly an interesting one because employees of a company can leave reviews about their employer. So it's sort of a tool to get an inside look at, if you're not necessarily looking for finances on the business, but you want to know about what people say about the business. Glassdoor is one that really has enhanced a lot of our research. And finally, going back to a social media app is Venmo. So and we talked about Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and a few other popular sites. Venmo is one that a lot of people don't really think of immediately, but going back to many presentations I gave a while back, when Venmo was kind of first coming out, I was like, oh, wow, this is really going to change the game with doing investigations. Because many of you might have seen how Venmo looks. So this is just another news clip to emphasize the point that Facebook and Instagram are there for your photos and everything, but when people are following the money, it really is a unique insight into a person. So Venmo, for anyone who may not be familiar with Venmo, it is an app that people use to simply pay each other money. So if we go out to lunch and one person picks up the bill, everyone else can just send their portion of the bill via Venmo to the person who paid. So I would simply open up my Venmo account, find Marissa by her name or phone number or email or whatever, and then I would just send her the funds, and it would just work app to app. It would take it from my bank account or the cash that I have within the app and send it to her. So this is what a transaction looks like on your phone. If you're investigating either Kayla Griffin or Whitney Marks, you would see this on their Venmo timeline, so to speak. So you'd see their photo, who sent the money, who received the money, the date that it was sent, and what it was for. It's important to note that this is only visible if the person has set their Venmo, has not set their Venmo to private. But many people, even after Venmo warned everybody about this, have still left it on public. So go check your Venmo right now and make sure that it's on private. But many people have not, and we still use this almost on a daily basis for folks that we're investigating. And very often, very, very often, we're finding that folks have not changed it to private. Well, great for us, because it means that we can see an entire feed, an entire history of payments that they've sent and received, as long as those payments were made public by both parties. So why does this matter? Why do we care that someone went to Logan's bachelorette party, or why do we care that someone went to lunch with someone? Well, really when it comes in handy is when you need to know, again, things about your subject that you would not be able to find through public records or would not be able to easily find through traditional means. So if you're working a cohabitation case, if you're working a personal injury case, an insurance defense case, a criminal defense case, you want to piece together a timeline of where somebody lives, where they're going, who they're hanging out with, and that sort of thing. Particularly if someone is paying someone else rent, that is a clue into maybe where they're staying. So we've all used databases to look up people. This is, think LexisNexis and Westlaw and TLO. So sometimes you'll just get a ton of addresses and a lot of sometimes conflicting information about where a person might be. Looking into their Venmo is a great glimpse into not only their activities, but sometimes where they live and where they work and who they spend time with. So another great one to keep in your toolkit. All
I
right.
have a quick question before we move on from Venmo. First of all, I'm totally going to vouch for that. We found great stuff on Venmo. So it's something that I think my generation, like we use Venmo all the time and you don't think about. So I think that's a great tip. Are there any apps that can be used to make the profile pictures better on Venmo because they're really small?
Yes, I did have a I didn't have a screenshot of that included, but I believe that if you're on if you're on the app or on the browser version, I think by tapping on their photo, it will expand. There might be a way to do that on the browser version, but I'd have to just see what the steps were technically on how to do that. So if you are on a browser version and you right click on their profile photo, sometimes you're able to open it up in a new tab and open up the full version. But I think on the app, I'm going to do a quick demonstration right now. If you tap on their photo when you're on their profile, Venmo profile, then it will load and expand the a bigger version of it. So that does appear to work pretty easily on the app that way. Were there any other questions to jump on now, or should I?
Nope.
Okay, great. So next I'm going to jump into just some tips for social media, finding your target's profile on social media. So these are just the quick 5. They can apply to pretty much any social media site and anything from Facebook to Instagram. Most of them do function this way. So the first of the obvious, of course, just to go to that social media platform and search for your subject's name or a username that you know them to use. So if they use baseball fan 123 on other sites, just to scan that other platform to see if that username exists on different platforms. The second is to use Google in a way that will search for your subject's name or known usernames just within that site. So if I go to Google and I type in site:instagram.com and then in quotation marks Edward Ajab or EAjab or something like that, it will tell Google, hey, I only want you to search the instagram.com domain for this term. So that's a great way to sort of filter out those millions and millions of not relevant search results and focus just on one particular domain. Cross-referencing other social media. So if you know that they have a Twitter, but you're trying to find their Instagram, for example, search to see if they mention Instagram on their Twitter. So here's a good example. This is the Twitter account for Alexis Knapp. And you can see right in her bio and in some of her tweets, she includes a link to her Instagram account. So if we're having difficulty finding her on Instagram, we could go back to her Twitter and see if there's any clues or links that point us in the right direction. The fourth clue is to find their family, their friends, their known associates, and see if they're connected to your subject. So look through, let's say you find a mother or father, brother, sister, fiance, boyfriend, girlfriend. somebody is probably going to have their friends list open and accessible. So search through there to see if they're connected with your subject, or search through any recent posts on their account to see if your subject liked or commented on any of their posts. And finally, this is a little bit of a technical method, but you can use a method where we take a burner phone, essentially a phone that is just right out of the box, and input our subject's phone number or email address into the contacts, the address book of that phone. And then when we load Instagram, it will say, hey, Instagram wants to access your contacts because we want to see who in your phone has an Instagram account so you can be friends. Isn't that great? So that will help you sort of connect an Instagram, a phone number or email address to an Instagram account, Twitter, Facebook, as long as that phone number or email address was used to register for one of those accounts. So it's kind of a trick that you're using to get a phone number and seeing if it's associated with a particular social media account. So as we get ready to wind down, just some few critical components of doing online investigations to keep in mind. The first challenge is always locating as many accounts and sources as you can. So people have so many different platforms now, it's really not, there's not a certain number of how many accounts someone may have. The average person has 8, but I've seen people, we've done investigations on folks who have multiple Facebooks and multiple Twitters. For some reason, they have 3 TikTok accounts. I don't know why, but it's about first assessing and collecting as much information as you can. So next, you have a jumping off point of where you need to investigate, and making sure that you're analyzing the content, not just using aggregator tools, but really going through and digging and seeing, are those beach photos and gym photos relevant to your case because the person said they have an injury. And then finally, saving and preserving evidence that you find so that you can use it later, and you can authenticate that it was appropriately captured in case it's deleted or in case it's called into question in your legal case. So there's a big difference between using those tools to get you started versus really getting into the weeds and really digging in on your case and on your subject, because you can really see and extract a lot more valuable data by spending the time and investing the time to go through and really analyze someone's social media footprint. So online investigations are always evolving and always changing. There's going to be new platforms coming out and platforms that people are shifting toward and away from. But ultimately, it's here to stay. And online and social media evidence has a lot of potential to add value to your cases. And as we look ahead, the challenges that we see are with new platforms and different platform configurations. Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook constantly just changing how their platform works. Privacy is another one. People who are more privacy conscious on certain platforms than others. Different personas. People may go by a different name on social media than their legal name is, or they may create multiple accounts. And finally, procedures. The way we find accounts, the way we extract information, all of that has to adapt to the other parts of the changing nature of doing online investigations and using online platforms. So with that, we can open it up to some questions. And I know that we do have a big group, so if there aren't enough time for everyone's questions, this is my contact information. So feel free to email me if you have any questions. The QR code will take you right to my LinkedIn. If you'd like to add me on LinkedIn, you can either just search for my name, Edward Ajab, Nighthawk Strategies, or if you have your phone handy, you can scan the QR code and that will bring you right to my LinkedIn. I post lots of stuff on there, but it's also a great way to keep in touch. So if anything does come up, we work on many different legal matters, like I said, other than just social media stuff. But feel free, and you are most welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn so that we can keep in touch for any future needs you might have. And with
Thank
that,
you. Yeah. No, I was just gonna say thank you so much. We really appreciate it. I know that was very helpful for me in the criminal defense world, so I know a lot of other areas as well. So one question, how expensive are some of the tools to capture social media sites that you discussed?
They range from, you know, a $15 report all the way up to, you know, if you have like a fully outsourced solution for another company to do it, is, you know, up in the hundreds or beyond. So, it really depends on the type of service. There are some out there that really just are like a high-powered Google that will go out and find, okay, John Doe, baseball fan 123, here's a couple phone numbers I think belong to him, now go. And so those will be the less expensive ones because they're just pulling in any digital data points that are out there that exist about that individual. Many of them may be false positives. It may also miss things, but the prices range very similar to how they would for like a Lexis report or another a database report.
Awesome. And then if you're willing to share the PowerPoint, then I can send it out to everyone. So I will talk with him after about that. Do you need individual license for the social media tools? I think that might go towards what you just discussed because the follow-up was or are most free. So I think that just kind of went into what you said. So a question is, do the social media tools block your info from the subject?
They do, yeah. So what they will do is their server is the one that's going out and crawling for any digital clues about your subject. But then if you click on a link that it provides in the search results, that's where you have to be careful about not leaving your fingerprints on that person's site. But yes, if you use a tool that a third-party aggregator to look for social media sites, it's their server that's doing the work. But it will provide you with a list of findings, and that's where you just have to sort of put the gloves on before you dive in for further inspection.
Awesome. Are there any other questions while we have the man in front of us himself? So then someone just said, so it would be better to use a burner phone for them.
Yep, that's right. Burner phone, or let's say if you use a social media search tool and it finds someone's LinkedIn, and as many of you know, LinkedIn, if I visit Marissa's LinkedIn now, it will tell her like you know, some creepy private investigator is looking at your social media account, or it will actually give your full name. So that's when you would just create use a separate LinkedIn account that's sanitized as blank, so that it's not giving away your identity. And if it's an app, the burner phone is a good question when it comes to the apps. If it's a type of service that you can only get to using an app that you download on your phone, that's when a burner phone would come in handy, because you would need to have it associated with some number. You'd have to sign up, you have to download the app. It would text you the confirmation code and all that. So that's when burner phones come in handy for going through all that part of the process.
Awesome. Any final questions? And like Eddie said, if you have any questions for him, you can reach out. I know my email is associated with the email that was sent out. So you can also shoot me any questions. There's another one. You spoke to not using your own accounts. Are you possibly opening to a lawsuit? What is the liability open to you personally for basically snooping?
Yeah, this is a great question. So I had a when you are looking at someone's account, even if it's passively, you are making yourself a witness. So the important thing to remember is, you know, you can walk by and look at a billboard on the street accidentally, but you can't unsee something that you've seen. So it works the same way digitally. And again, with the disclosure that I defer to the attorneys on this one, but we had a case recently where an attorney contacted us and he said that exact thing. He's like, I was just looking around. I saw some stuff that might be relevant to my case. Oh my gosh, what do I do? And so in order to avoid him becoming his own witness, and it sort of complicates the representation process if, you know, he's a lawyer, but he's also making himself a witness. That's where we came in to do, you know, do the full examination, look at the person's profile, and gather the evidence from there, confirm it was them, things like that. So that way we could be called on as the witness. We could be relied upon for the authentication of it. And it looks, it preserves it better in a way when a private investigation firm goes through and looks at it and, you know, makes a report about it. So you can kind of snoop and look, but sometimes you may come across things that inadvertently then make you a witness or a party to the case. So that's actually an excellent.
I think there's another question. Can you briefly tell us about the most often illegitimate uses for burner phones?
Yeah, that would be so. One thing that comes to mind right away is illegitimate uses would be hacking. You know, trying to get into someone's Uber account. Many of you have probably seen like a suspicious text saying, here's your confirmation code for logging into, you know, you forgot your password, here's your confirmation code to reset it. That's someone who is, you know, using a burner phone or a computer somewhere to try to get into your account, and it's called credential stuffing. So they're illegitimate uses would be, you know, trying to use a burner phone to obfuscate your identity so that you can do something illegal, you know, crack into someone's Uber account or their credit card account, bank account. You know, spoofing, another illegitimate use would be to use it to call, you know, spoof a phone number at you as the caller, to call somebody else, to pretend to be somebody else, or to call a financial institution. That's a huge no-no. So all those things that would be illegitimate even without technology is sort of the same way when it comes to technology. Is just being very careful about how and who you're representing yourself to be. We're using the phone as an investigative tool, because certain resources are only acceptable if we download their app. So like, you know, a lot of dating apps are only apps, and it's only, you know, you have to swipe and things like that. So we just needed that device as a tool to conduct that investigation. But then going beyond that to crack into accounts and hack and impersonate is where it starts to veer off course.
Awesome. Well, I keep thinking we're done, and then there's another. Can you suggest a burner phone plan without a contract and one without using your true identity to refill? My investigative social media act often requires phone number to reset.
Yes, anything that you can buy at off the shelf. So think Track Phone, Mint Mobile. I think a lot of those that are prepaid phones that come with a prepaid card, that will allow you to refill the phone minutes or the plan by using a card like that, because that's the easiest way, because it doesn't expire. You know, it can sit on the shelf when you need to use that phone, and there's no contract, because you know, then of course you got to run the contract and stuff every month. The only downside is that if you don't renew the phone number every month and reload the card or reload the phone, then and after a few months that phone number will expire and go back out to the public for someone else to use. But the most affordable ones would be the off-the-shelf options that you can get at you know, at Target or something like that, which would be those brands that are fully prepaid, no contract, that are literally in a box. So I would look out for those ones.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much. I know it was extremely helpful, and we really appreciate you imparting your knowledge on all of us. I will send the recording out to everyone so that they all have it. And I hope you all have a great rest of your week.
Thank you, everyone.